Today we're doing a tour of the Downtown West neighborhood. It's one of 79 neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis. Talks for this new city hall began in 1888 when David Francis was mayor. He has a star on the St. Louis Walk of Fame. By the time construction began in 1890, he was the governor of Missouri. It was completed in 1904. In front are statues of Pierre Laclede, one of the founders of St. Louis, and Ulysses Grant, the 18th president, who used to sell firewood in this very spot in the 1850s. This was the police headquarters from 1927 to 2014. This is the J.C. Penney warehouse building built 1929. They were there until 1954, and the Edison Brothers warehouse from 1967 to 1994. It's become a combination of condo and hotel. That's the Gateway Transportation Center. This is Enterprise Center, home of the St. Louis Blues. The 2019 Stanley Cup champions. Actor John Hamm frequently attends games.
There are liars and thieves. There are blasphemers. There are those who hate.
The statues in front are Al McInnes, Bernie Federko, St. Louis and Harry Weber did that one. And Brett Hall. The Frankie and Johnny murder occurred on this site in 1899. Frankie Baker shot Alan Britt, who eventually became Johnny. His mistress, Alice Pryor, became Nelly Bly. She claimed self-defense and was acquitted. It's portrayed in a Thomas Hart Benton mural in the Missouri State Capitol. Kiel Auditorium was here from 1934 to 1992. The St. Louis Hawks, who left for Atlanta, won the 1958 NBA championship right here on this site. They featured Ed McCauley and Bob Pettit, who scored 50 points in the Game 6 clincher. His 50 points in a clincher was only equaled in 2021 by Giannis of the Milwaukee Bucks. World boxing champion St. Louisan and Vashon High School honor student Henry Armstrong boxed here several times, as did Archie Moore. The Spinks each boxed here once. Harry Truman gave a speech here in October of 1948 before the election. Josephine Baker was here in 1952. Andy Williams was here in 1966. Dick Clark and his Caravan of Stars were here. Elvis Presley was here in 1970 and 1973. The Fifth Dimension played here in 1973. The Isley Brothers were here in 1976. REO Speedwagon were here in 1985. Hulk Hogan made his TV debut in the modern WWF at the Chase Park Plaza in 1983, and he also wrestled at this site at Kiel Auditorium. Kiel Center opened in 1994. We hired this guy, if you remember him, Mike Keenan. But he did get Wayne Gretzky. His wife is from St. Louis. This became Savis, Scottrade, and now Enterprise Center. The St. Louis University Billikens played basketball here for decades. Jerry Seinfeld was here in 2023. On the backside was the Kiel Opera House, then Peabody. Now it's the Stifel Theater. They could be conjoined like when Harry Truman was speaking. Some other people who were here were Opera singer Helen Traubel, Agnes Moorehead in 1951, opera singer Grace Bumbry, Chuck Berry in 1957, and Fats Domino, Ike and Tina Turner in 1959, Marvin Gaye in 1963, Johnny Carson and the Rat Pack in 1965, Clark Terry, Fontella Bass, Judy Garland in 1967, Charlie Daniels in 1977, The Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, John Mellencamp in 1980 and 1984, Miles Davis in 1981, R.E.M. in 1986, Albert King in 1990, Jason Alexander was here for the Jewish Gala in 2010 and 2013, Jay Leno, and Aretha Franklin in 2011, and the Rockettes came back home to St. Louis where they started in 2012, Cedric the Entertainer, Michael McDonald, and Vivica A. Fox. So that's a sample of some of the people who have been here. From 1934 to 1968, the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra played here. This is the firefighter statue across from City Hall. And in this area, in front of Soldiers Memorial, Nelly had a free concert in 2012. Soldiers Memorial was dedicated by President Franklin Roosevelt in 1936, who was in St. Louis. It opened to the public in 1938 and was originally a World War I memorial honoring St. Louis's war dead. Subsequent war heroes have been added to it. The four sculptures are loyalty, vision, courage, and sacrifice. They were sculpted by St. Louisan Walker Hancock. That's the old municipal courts building built in 1911. That's the Friedrich Schiller statue, a German poet and playwright. That's the back of the post office. Union Station opened in 1894. It was designed by Theodore Link in the Romanesque revival style. They had 100,000 people go through here a day in the 1940s, including Harry Truman, who held up the famous Dewey Defeats Truman newspaper right here as he was traveling back to Washington, D.C. in 1948. And we have a new soccer team. Listerine was invented in 1879 here in St. Louis as an oral and surgical antiseptic. It was licensed to Jordan Wheat Lambert. His son Gerard Lambert had a meeting with employees and they came up with the idea to fight halitosis, bad breath. That was in the 1920s, and it really got their sales going. This was their headquarters right here at 2101 Locust from 1891 to 1938. His daughter, Rachel Bunny Lambert Mellon, redesigned the White House Rose Garden in 1961. She was a talented horticulturalist and gardener. She gave $725,000 to John Edwards, who was accused of using it illegally to hide his pregnant mistress. And Gerard Lambert's brother was Albert Bond Lambert, who our airport is named after. And he was a backer of Charles Lindbergh. It was Seaman Products Company from 1938 to 1975. And there's a banner and a mural for our soccer team. This is the Butler Brothers building, built in 1906. And on this site was part of the first World Chess Championship in 1886. They did have a banner on the building that looked like this. It started in New York, then games 6 through 9 were right here, then it finished up in New Orleans. That's the Campbell House Museum, built in 1851. Robert Campbell bought it in 1854, and his family lived there until 1938. It's an amazing Victorian mansion. He also owned the Southern Hotel, which burned down, which I mentioned in the downtown video. That white building is the Terracotta Lofts, and you can see the top of City Museum through here. This is the St. Louis Central Library, opened in 1912. Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate, donated money for this. It's Beaux-Arts architecture designed by Cass Gilbert, who also designed the St. Louis Art Museum. Before this, from 1883 to 1907, the St. Louis Exposition and Music Hall was here. The St. Louis Symphony played here. The 1888 Democratic Convention was here, where President Grover Cleveland was renominated. It was the second time a convention was here in St. Louis, and Cleveland went on to win the popular vote, but still lose, just as happened to Samuel Tilden in 1876. In 1896, the Republican convention was scheduled for here, but renovations to the hall weren't done, so it was held just south of City Hall in a temporary structure. William McKinley was nominated. It was the third time in a row where a nominees convention was in St. Louis, won the popular vote, and this time he actually won the whole thing. In 1904, the Democratic Convention was here. Alton Parker was nominated and then blown out by Teddy Roosevelt. Finally, in 1916, after this library was built here, the Democratic Convention was at the St. Louis Coliseum, which was just on the other side of Jefferson, right about here, to the left. Woodrow Wilson was nominated and then re-elected. Hulk Hogan was here at the library in 2009 promoting a book. Now we'll take a look inside. It's absolutely beautiful inside. They do have additional space where the clerk has to go get items for you. That's happened a few times for me. Not just the rare books and manuscripts, but even some regular items. We're in the top 20 largest libraries in the country. That's the Shell Oil Company building through there. Jimmy Doolittle worked there from about 1930 to 1940. He did the Doolittle raid on Tokyo in World War II. This U.S. bank was the birthplace of the American Legion. That's the Jefferson Arms Hotel building behind it. It opened in 1904 in time for the World's Fair. It was the official hotel of the 1904 and 1916 Democratic conventions, although the business was held in the halls we mentioned earlier. When Cardinals owner Sam Breeden traded Rogers Hornsby in 1926 after the Cardinals had just won their first World Championship, he said, "If you want to fight about it, I'll be having lunch at the Jefferson Arms Hotel." This is St. Nicholas. This is an old parish. Everything's been rebuilt. This parish is now St. Josephine Bakhita since it merged 3 parishes together. Bill Clay was a congressman for 32 years. He went to grade school here at St. Nicholas, and they added a high school, and he graduated here also in 1949. These are the Monogram on Washington apartments. In this area was the first building and campus of Washington University, which was founded in 1853. William Greenleaf Eliot was one of the founders. Robert Brookings was chairman of the board when they secured the land west of Forest Park for its current campus. Brookings Hall is named after him. These are the Ely Walker Lofts. This was the Ely and Walker Dry Goods Company building. One of the founders was David D. Walker. His son was George Herbert Walker. He lived in St. Louis and had kids. Dorothy Walker married Prescott Bush. Her son was George Herbert Walker Bush, the 41st president. And his son is George W. Bush, the 43rd president. George Herbert Walker Jr., who was Dorothy's brother and an uncle of the first President Bush, his son was George Herbert Walker III, who was also born in St. Louis and lived here and was CEO of Stifel. His son, George Herbert Walker IV, was born here also. So we have connections to both the Bush beer family and the Bush presidents. This is the International Shoe Company building. The annex in back is the City Museum created by Bob Casserly, a graduate of Vianney High School. Tennessee Williams worked here from 1932 to 1935. And Stanley Kowalski worked here. He used his name in A Streetcar Named Desire. And Jim Connor, who became Jim O'Connor in the Glass Menagerie. This was built for Roberts, Johnson, and Rand Shoe Company in 1907, and they merged with Peters Shoe Company to become International Shoe. Robert Guillaume sold newspapers outside here. He was Benson. This was a major garment district through World War II, so there are all sorts of terms relating to clothing. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks a lot for taking the time to watch.